that is what's left of the pad material.
Holy crap.
I am so glad I'm replacing these. Oh boy. Holy smokes. That was incredibly stupid. I cleaned the piston out a little bit. The outside is actually in really good shape, so I just kind of sanded the inside a little bit, and it is exposed to the elements a little bit, so I'm not going to go too crazy with cleaning it, but the outside is pretty good. I got new rebuild kits, so all new seals and a new ring. Alright, so I ended up finishing up the first caliper. I stopped filming just because I didn't know what I was doing, so I will film the whole second caliper and kind of give you the rundown. So this time, instead of just blasting it with air, I'm going to use this handy brake tool. You can get it on Amazon for probably like, I don't know, 10 bucks. An old pad against the piston, and then the brake tool goes right there. And I'm going to leave it a little loose, so while I blow air through the caliper, it's just going to prevent it from flying out. Whoa! Ho ho ho, Nelly. Still a little bit of brake fluid in there. And then as you go, just loosen it. And then you can put some more air in there. Whoa! Man. It's a little smelly. And then at this point, it looks like it's free, so you can just yank it on out. There she is. More than likely, there's going to be some fluid left in here, so just shove a paper towel in there or something to clean it out to make this a little easier. Next up, there is a snap ring that looks like this, and you got to pull this out. You don't need a special tool or anything. Just grab yourself a screwdriver or a pick or something, and you could even just start pulling on this dust shield, especially if you're going to replace it. All right. So dust shield comes out. If you're reusing these, which I don't know why you would, that might not be the best idea because you could tear it. And then, if you can see that little shiny, oh, you can't even see it. It's just right above the screwdriver tip here. Just like so. There's a little black seal right there. Go ahead and grab your pick or a similar device, and you can remove it. Clean this up a little bit. It looks like it's in pretty good shape on the inside, so I'll just clean it a little bit. I'll be smart about it this time. How about that? Grab a little hammer. Wow, look at that. So, it's really not in terrible shape, but, you know, it'd be good just to clean it up a little bit, make it, you know, better. Plus, I can blow some air through that hole now, too, just to make sure everything's nice and clear. Whoa. So, lucky for me, this piston is also in pretty darn good shape. I mean, the outside looks great. The inside was a little buggered up and rusty in some spots, but I sanded it a little bit with some 220, and it looks alright. So these are the new seals, and this one goes in first. This is what goes inside of the actual cavity here, and I've heard that these are tapered, and that means you have to install it a certain direction, but I couldn't really tell at all if this is tapered or not, so I'm just kind of going to send it. Not exactly sure what these colored markings are, but I'm just going to rub some brake fluid on it and then put it in its home. Don't get too excited, because this is the easy seal to put in. You've still got the difficult one here in a second. I was struggling with it quite a bit with the first caliper until I sort of figured out the proper way to put it in. So I referenced off the old seals, and you'll see that it has a lot of stuff going on. The most notable is this little outer lip here. Here it is in comparison to the new one. Has the same outer lip on the edge. This is how you want to install it. Make sure the flat side goes in and all the ribs go out. Next thing you're going to want to do, grab your piston. Your piston goes in like this with the open end facing out. And here's your seal. Take the seal, put it over the front. If you have any flaps that roll over, make sure you sort of work them out. Push it down slowly, carefully, blissfully, until it clicks in to the crevasse. And mine actually doesn't look like it's seated properly, so I'm gonna have to fix it real quick. Alright, it's seated properly now. Hopefully I can show you this easily. When you peel back the layers, you can see that little lip is resting inside of the groove. And what you don't want to have happen is have it start flipping up like that. So just make sure it's seated all the way in there. You're going to take your piston. You're going to put a little brake fluid on it just to grease it up. Insert it into the caliper and start pushing it in. You can rock it back and forth. Just make sure it's going in relatively straight. And then once you get to a point where you can't push it in with your hands any longer, you can either grab the brake tool, which I highly recommend using. Please ignore the barking dog in the background. Not sure where that's coming from. You can also use a clamp. Whatever you do, be careful of the piston. You don't want to damage the outside of it because that would kind of suck. Start cruising along. You don't want to feel any resistance. If you do, back off and try again from a different angle. You're just going to keep going until you close this gap right here all the way, and then go a tiny bit more, and then you should be good. Kind of have to press this into the caliper all the way around. I would start at the bottom because it's just easier, and then you can work your way around. No reason to rush this. Once you think you have it all the way seated, go around one more time in this groove and just press on the seal. You can even get your flashlight out and go around and inspect the whole perimeter just to make sure everything is seated properly. Once you're done with that, it's time to grab your new snap ring. And one thing I noticed is the new snap ring is bigger than the old one. Right here, where my fingers are moving, I got this side lined up, but these two don't line up. So all I'm going to do is just snip the new ring to be the same size as the old one, and that should be that. Good old snip. Use a file or some sandpaper to just make sure your cut end won't poke a hole in the new seal. Opening is going to be towards the top. Then you just want to push it back. And slide it around the bottom. And then push the tops in. Like so. Now, mine is not set all the way, so you might have to go back in there with the screwdriver to push it the rest of the way in. Once you have that ring positioned correctly, you can reinstall your bleeder valve if you chose to remove it. Just make sure you put it in the right spot. You can sort of see some witness marks on this one, so you can tell it had a crush washer right here which means that's for the other brake line to come in. So you can also tell by that little dot right there, because there's an extension of the line that goes into that little hole, just I guess for purposes of locating. So in we go. And remember, it doesn't have to be super tight, just tight enough, because you'll be cracking it later to bleed the brakes. Now we can pop the cap on. Oh yeah. Well, with all that said and done, it should be good. Although, there is one final test I suppose you could do if you really wanted to, and that is just make sure the dust shield is seated all the way. And I'm using dust shield as sort of a loose term. When I'm talking about the dust shield, I really mean this seal right here. I don't know why I keep calling it that. So, I don't even know if this is a correct way of testing this, but you're going to set this up again the same way I set it up when I was removing the piston. And grab your air chuck and carefully blow some more air into this hole to make sure the dust shield can stretch out a little bit. So the issue that I keep having is whenever I do that, I can literally by hand pull this out of its seat. So that's not a good thing. I don't know why that's happening. I'm going to do the same thing on the other one and then see if I have the same issue. Yeah, man, I don't know what's going on. I fear that cutting those snap rings might be the reason for this, but I'm not entirely sure. So what I'm going to do is take this apart again and then see if the snap ring fills the whole perimeter. It's apart again. Didn't take very long, obviously. Just got to snap it right out. And the snap ring does cover the same amount of area as these old ones. It goes all the way around and they almost touch at the ends inside of the caliper. So I can't see what the issue would be. Alright, we're back the next day. I messed around with it a little more last night and I think I figured out the dealio. First, gotta take this one back apart. So, grab your dust boot. I was calling this a dust boot last night, and I didn't think that was the right term, but apparently it's the right term, so I'm on the right track. You're gonna grab your... Man, got a frog in my throat. Gonna grab your piston. Remember, flat side goes in. So make sure this is oriented the right direction. I explained that earlier. You're gonna put some brake fluid on this sucker, as well as on this for better lubrication. Put her on. A little bit slippery. Make sure you've got no folds. Put it kind of on the back, like that. Caliper. Now is the fun part. So, this you're going to put in like this. And your goal here is to get this very outside flap tucked in to the caliper. So take your time. I know I said take your time last time, but now I really mean it. You're just going to go around and tuck it in. It's a little painful, especially in a low light situation, but you got to believe in yourself. Once you get the seal in, you're just going to want to keep pushing, because there is an inner lip that this, I think, needs to sit behind. So just keep pushing until this very outer edge starts to disappear behind that lip. Just go around slowly and patiently and push down. Once you have it pushed in enough, it doesn't have to be all the way, you can go ahead, make sure the piston is straight, like I just did not do. There we go. Push it in, grab your brake tool. Now your goal here is to push it in until one of the ridges catches the inside of this groove right here. So hopefully the camera will pick up the noise, but you will hear the dust shield start to expand and take up that space once this goes inside all the way. Hear that? And then go a little farther. I'm going to call that good right there. So we're almost there. Next thing you're going to want to do is go around the edge one more time with a pick or a mini screwdriver or whatever works for you, and make sure that that outer ring is fully seated behind the lip that's on the inside of this. Luckily the dust shield loosens up a little bit once it expands and fills that space, so it's easier to work with. After you make sure it's fully seated, you're going to grab your snap ring and, hopefully without my head getting in the way, you're just going to want to make sure, not that it really matters, I doubt, but when I disassembled them, the opening was at this side of the caliper. I'm going to call this the top for now, I guess. Alright, now that you snap that in, go around, make sure everything's seated, and try to check to see that you actually captured that rubber with the snap ring. Make sure the snap ring is all the way around the inside of the rubber, so it's holding pressure against the inside of the boot, so it will not come off. After you're done making sure it's seated, you are basically home free. Now, one thing I do want to mention. What is one thing I do want to mention? Oh. Is that what I did is measured the distance between these two pads as well as the rotor, and ended up being about 2¼ inches. The only reason I did that was to get a basis of an idea on how much this caliper is going to compress. So right now, it's sitting almost all the way open, and it's 2½ inches, which means it only has 1/4 of an inch to move before it presses the pads against the rotor. Now obviously, as the pads wear, it's going to become less and less inches. For example, this is the old pad, which has barely any material left on it. I mean, this is the comparison against it with the new pad, so you can kind of see that. The only reason I did that was because after I get these rebuilt, I like to grab some air and shoot the piston out a little bit just to make sure everything is seated. Now, what I did last time was shoot the piston out too much, so the dust shield on the piston side started to curl, and that required me to completely take the assembly apart again, which was a little unfortunate. So I'm only going to compress it to about 2 inches. Watch your fingers. Another reason why I like to do this is because then you can see if this is seated all the way. And what you want to see, that this little rubber slot right here is in the groove of the piston, which means that part is seated correctly, which is great. And another thing you can do is check along the outside again to make sure, for the most part, this is compressing evenly or stretching evenly. The hardest part to see is back here on the rear side, which is why that's what you want to start with when you're reinstalling the dust boot, because you can work it from that side and it's just a lot easier. That looks pretty good to me. Now what I'm going to do is recompress this a little bit, just so I know that there's going to be enough room for me to install these back onto the car. So that is good right there. We got about 2 3/8, which is 1/8 above 1/4, which means that's 1/8 inch of wiggle room, which should be plenty. So now that that headache is over, I think I'm going to call it a night, and next clip you'll see me reinstalling these calipers. I just want to mention something really quick. I don't know what it is, but it smells so bad right now. Like, it smells like like a bog or a marsh. And I think the reason for that might be that I am positioned right next to the septic drain field, so I suppose potentially I could be smelling that. But it's pretty bad. Just thought I'd let you know. Alright, so that is this side done. I'm going to double check everything, and I discovered that the lower caliper pin actually has a seal on it, so I'm going to be replacing that as well, because that was a part that I did not know what it was when I saw it in the parts bag. So I'm going to go ahead and swap that one over on the other side real quick. Shouldn't be super difficult. And then I'll bleed the brakes some other time.